Shawn, tell us your theoretical framework.
So I come from a cultural historical tradition based in the work of Vygotsky. In particular, the psychology work that came out of that had to do with how people, developmental psychology, how people learn. And if you take that perspective seriously, there's three main points. The first one is that all learning is the result of internalization. What does that mean? It means that in human action we start with communicative goals and communicative tools and communicative resources for communicating around activity, and that by participating in that we internalize those tools and they eventually become cognitive tools. Some socioculturalists, like my advisor, for instance, didn't like the term internalization in particular, and so they would use various other terms like appropriation, mastery, things like that. But I don't have any problem with internalization myself. But that's the basic idea in the cultural historical perspective. Learning is the internalization of communicative tools for cognitive purposes, and they become cognitive tools. The second point around that is that because everything starts in communicative action, if you want to understand learning, you've got to literally understand how units of action get constructed, and how that shapes what can be internalized from them, and what's important to be internalized for the group, what's not important, what's salient, what's not salient. What this means is that your unit of analysis is no longer the individual and their internalization, but the activities of which they're a part that involve multiple agents sometimes, multiple tools, multiple resources, some of which are foregrounded and internalized, some of which are backgrounded and not internalized. Agents are deploying some tools that get accepted by others or rejected by others, that kind of thing. So your unit of analysis is no longer the individual learner, although they're an important component, but the activity of which they're a part. And the third piece of that is what we call distribution, which is this notion that in order to think, you can't say that thinking is just a bunch of stuff that's going on in the head. In order to think, you have to just the thing we call thinking or remembering or making an argument is distributed, is an activity, not a thing, but an activity that's distributed among an agent, somebody trying to do something, and a set of tools they're using to do it, as well as, in some cases, a context, so like a physical tool. So for instance, think about a person who's blind and crossing the street, right? So the activity here is crossing the street. Where does their thinking end? Where does crossing the street begin and end for them? It's not a simple cognitive process here, because it in fact involves using a stick with a point on the end and actually feeling around in the world that way. Where is the mind here? Where is the brain here? Is the thinking? Is everything happening here? Is everything happening in the stick? No, it's happening in some combination of the brain, the stick, the person's hand, and the larger context, the curve that the stick just hit, the blinking, the beeping sound of the walk sign, the noises around that help that person understand what's going on. So literally all those things have to be taken into account in understanding how thinking happens or remembering happens or learning.